You know what? Just F it. Let's just go. Right? Let's talk about a movie from 1977, American, called Wizards. De facto, one of the strangest movies of all time. And after thinking about it over and sleeping on it, I think I can see a chain of its inspiration over many years. So let's talk about this just weird ass work of art. First of all, it was made by the guy who made Fritz the Cat. If you don't know what that is, don't look it up. Okay, just don't. Okay, um, like first of all, I think Fritz the Cat is responsible for inspiring the movie Cool World, which I've never seen and don't really care, but I'm more than well aware of its influence in the animation industry, and I think that also ended up resulting in Bebe's Kids later on. This concept that cartoon movies can be made for adults; they don't always have to be made for children. That's kind of where they were coming from with this. Now, Fritz the Cat is just one of the most just abominable pieces of filth ever made. Honestly, I don't know why I watched it. I guess morbid curiosity makes you just watch crap sometimes. But Wizards, I actually think, is one of the crowning achievements of the hand animation industry in the burgeoning halcyon days when it was first getting started. Like Wizards is a story that is it's magic versus technology basically. Like this story, let's tell you the whole story. Who cares? The story opens up with a far shot of Earth in outer space, and then it frickin' blows up with like one of the corniest canned explosion sounds that still gets used to this day, even. And the narrator is like, when the 200,000 nukes went off, triggered by the five terrorists, the world forgot what the sun looks like for 2 million years. Humans don't exist anymore. They have gone through so many cycles of nuclear radiation that the narration actually describes at one point each new birth as another new detestable abomination. Um, just these are what humans are. We mutated and irradiated into lizard people and dragons and trolls and orcs and goblins. And then it's like, well, now that there's no more humans left, the progenitors of mankind then came out from their hiding spots. The elves, the pixies, the gnomes, the dwarves, you know, the fae folk. They came back to reclaim the surface of the earth because humans don't exist anymore. Um, and at first, it's, you might think to yourself, why couldn't you just say that this magical land exists the way it does? Why did it have to come to be after 2 million years of nuclear radiation fallout, finally peeling back enough for sunlight to pierce through the skies? Um, because this story's effed up and weird. That's why. And it starts off with that, and then it's like 3,000 years after the world was inhabitable once again, and there was peace across everything, because now there was the good lands where people could live in harmony, and the mutants just kind of kept to themselves, type of deal. And then one day, the eldest fairy queen of them all, she's having like a gala party, and all the people in the Hobbit village are there to eat and drink and dance and be merry long into the night. The fairy queen has like a trance that overpowers her, and she leaves the party and goes up to her hilltop cabin. And while she's there, a dark cyclone envelops the township, and when it has passed, she has aged apparently like 200 years and has given birth to two wizards. One of them, Avatar, is the good boy. He's the good wizard. He's even described as having a magnetic charisma that attracts people towards him so that he may make their lives better. Everything about Avatar, he's just a good wizard, you know? And his brother, Black Wolf, is a mutant wizard. Like, lady, he's already a mutant in a world where that's not considered to be good. And then you named him Black Wolf. I wonder why he turned evil. Don't name your kid Black Wolf. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, I mean, come on. So after, years go by, Avatar is taking care of his mother. Black Wolf never visits her. And after she dies, Black Wolf tries to usurp her throne of power, and so he can control the world. And Black Wolf and Avatar have a super sweet wizard's duel. You ever seen Sword in the Stone? They have a wizard's duel. They're polymorphing themselves. Like, I'm going to turn into a giant boa constrictor. Well, I'm going to turn into a giant gorilla chimera, and I'm going to rip you in half. Just crazy wizard's duel, you know? Black Wolf gets beaten, and he swears that he will come back, and you will rue this day. You should have killed me. I'll make you regret sparing me. So Black Wolf goes off, and he starts his own kingdom called Scorch One. Yeah, like an AOL screen name. Everything else is called, like Tantagel and Farengrad and, fantasy names of kingdoms and stuff like that. He named his place Scorch One. And I absolutely adore the animation differences when you're seeing like the Fey colonies and stuff. Everything is verdant and green, and there's organic plants, and it's done with watercolors for the backgrounds, and everything is very bright and vibrant. But when you're in Scorch One, when it's cutting over to the villains and what they're doing, everything there looks like multiply Peter Milton and MC Escher's drafting and lithography. That's what the backgrounds look like in Scorch One. They look so mechanical, drained of all color and life, and it's beautiful in how stark of a difference you see between the contrast of a beautiful living world where everyone lives in harmony with what is called the real, true, natural technology, which is nature itself, and every other form of technology that precedes that is a perversion and a bastardization of technology that mankind has created. So, like, that's where we're at in this story. It's magic versus technology. And for 3,000 years, Black Wolf has been going through ancient ruins in the lands that he inhabits and finding old pieces of technology and figuring out how to recreate them. So he creates Sherman tanks, and he creates bomber prop planes. And it's like, these look a lot like the things Hitler used in World War II. You know what else Black Wolf became obsessed with? The other things he found in those bunkers, like Nazi flags. His throne of evil dark power is literally sitting on top of a swastika made of glass so that you can see the flowing lava of his factories moving beneath him. Like, I saw this, and he's got one of his little demon henchmen in his throne room just like tearing meat off of this carcass that's hanging from a hook from the ceiling. This is a dark movie, by the way. And then after this, creature has kind of, just like been stealing meat from the king, even in his presence when his back is turned, because these people are unscrupulous and have no morals. After he takes like the last chunk of meat off of the hook, and there's just like a haunch still dangling from it, it slowly starts rotating, and then when it turns and faces the camera, there's a Star of David on the ass of the pig. I was like, yo, this symbolism is hype, dude. I'm actually here for this. And the craziest part, though, is, you see, the troops. This is 3,000 years long that Black Wolf has been building an army. And he keeps having this problem that his troops become disinterested in the middle of a siege, and they just kind of walk off and stop fighting. And so, what did Hitler do? Well, he created the Joy Division. What did Black Wolf do? He found what he calls the true ultimate weapon. Keeping in mind that this guy is like working on making nuclear bombs. He's creating tanks that are going to be fighting against, like elves and fae with their swords and bows and arrows, and there's no way for them to fight back. You can't fight a tank with a bow and arrow. But none of that is enough. Then Black Wolf discovers what he calls the true ultimate weapon, with which our people will become invincible, and anyone who challenges us will fall at our feet. It's a crimson red film reel projector loaded with Nazi propaganda and footage of Hitler speaking. He starts showing that to all the demons and mutants and consigners of hell that have joined his infernal army, and they are suddenly empowered. Nothing can stop them. And again, Black Wolf is a dark evil wizard. So he starts infusing his like hell magic into the projector to make it have this psychological effect where it just breaks the minds of anyone who's coming up against his. It's a Nazi army. It's a Nazi army that uses demons and trolls and ogres and goblins as a symbolic representation of what the Third Reich was. And Scorch 1 is just the beginning. He is intending on making a Scorch 3. Third Reich. How about that? And that plot element I actually thought was super well done. I understand why back in the day people probably pushed it aside more. Again, this came out in 1977, and 30% of every film that came out was just like, oh, screw the Nazis, screw Hitler, America's cool. But to see it done with a fantasy world going against technology, the simile and metaphors that present this symbolism, I think are actually probably the best ever done. They're freaking really good. And then, like all the machines of war and death they're rotoscoped, which is something that's not really done that much anymore, obviously. But I found the disparity between the two animation styles used in a single film. I thought it was very striking and a wonderful way to show, like, these things don't look or move like any of the other stuff you've seen in this movie. All of the magical creatures and beings and that sort of thing are presented in these colorful, vibrant ways that look organic. And then you have these weird, janky, mostly black with splotches of color, tanks and riders on horseback, and they went pretty far. Even the prop helmets had horns on them, and in post, they changed the people's eyes to just be solid blotches of red or green, because it's supposed to be the demonic forces of hell. And I think they did a phenomenal job, especially considering that kind of animation was still, it was very nascent, I guess is the correct term for it. It was just coming to the fore, and everyone was seeing how useful it was going to be. And they just took like every kind of animation style and technique and made a single movie out of it, which I think is amazing. But anyway, 3,000 years go by, and now Black Wolf has his Nazi propaganda projector, the true ultimate weapon in a war. That seems pretty relevant to today, right? I mean, I think it does. And Avatar, he's in the middle of teaching like the fairy princess who wants to become the new queen. He's been teaching her for like 150 years all kinds of magic and arcane arts and how all of that stuff works and how to live in harmony with the world so that she can be a benevolent fairy goddess type thing. And her dad, the mayor of town, happens to be in there, and he's like, Avatar, you are our last wizard. You are the only one who can stop Black Wolf, and we've been hearing some pretty bad things about what he's doing, and we're kind of worried. One day, someone's just going to come walk straight up into our kingdom and just start shooting people with the guns that he's producing, man. You need to do something about him. And Avatar is like, it's really funny. Avatar is actually like smoking a cigar with his foot. It's so weird. It's just what he does. He smokes a cigar by putting it between his toes. And then Necron 99 breaks into where they're at and shoots the mayor dead, the Fairy Queen's dad. And Avatar realizes, okay, I can't just sit by and hope for good things anymore. I have to actually do something, because they literally have walked into our front yard and started shooting us now. Can't just sit back and hope for good times. So he reprograms Necron 99 and calls him Peace. And they go in a ragtag group. Avatar the wizard, the Fairy Queen, an elf warrior dude, and Peace the robot. They decided they were going to go to Scorch 1, and they're going to put a stop to Black Wolf and his ambitions. Peace leads the way because he still remembers the lay of the land, even though he's been reprogrammed. And that's some fantastic foreshadowing, because you might think to yourself, how does this ancient wizard who hates technology know how to reprogram a robot? Good foreshadowing. So, they go on their Princess Bride, never-ending story adventure through different lands, meeting different peoples and all that. But, the whole point is that they eventually get to Black Wolf's frickin' Nazi Germany Empire kingdom thing. And I love the way this movie ends. Because the whole movie has tried to be this story about how you need to live in harmony with nature and you need to spread love as much as possible. But even when Avatar is in Scorch 1 and he's trying to just grow flowers in places and show people, look, this place can be beautiful too. You guys you need to readjust. You need to realize what you're doing is wrong, and you can live in harmony and have a beautiful world like ours too. And he just resists violence. He resists fighting back the entire movie. He does every single thing in his power to be amicable, docile, and non-violent, and to de-escalate everything as much as possible the whole movie. And then, when he has finally confronted Black Wolf, he's just like, to be honest with you, I haven't really been practicing magic that much for the last couple hundred years, and I'm a little rusty now. So I don't know how our wizard duel is going to go. And Black Wolf is just like, you cannot stop me now. I am invincible. I have already begun my campaign, and the world will soon be mine. Nothing you do can stop me now, brother. And Avatar, he starts reaching in his wizard robe sleeves, and he's just like, yeah, well, let me show you a little trick Mom taught me. You weren't around for it, so you're probably not aware of it. But I just have one thing to say to you. And then he pulls out of his sleeve a Luger P08, a pre-World War II German handgun. How ironic. And then shoots Black Wolf through the heart while saying, I'm glad you changed your last name, you son of a bitch. Shoots him through the heart one more time just to make sure he's dead, and then just throws the gun off a cliff and is like, yeah, I'm done. I did what I was supposed to do. That is one of the best endings I've ever seen in anything. That is so freaking great, dude. And, they destroy his projector, and then his army falls into shambles, and they don't have a leader anymore, so it becomes a point where they allow the mutants to continue living, and they don't persecute them anymore, because it's like, we don't want to become the enemy. That's all they ever did, is persecute us and enslave us. We're not going to do that to you anymore. Y'all can live wherever you want, and we won't bother you anymore. Just leave us alone too. And then, Avatar and the Fairy Queen, they decide that they're going to go start their own kingdom somewhere. And then the elf dude goes back to his kingdom and is like, yo, I avenged our mayor and the Fairy Queen's dad. I've brought vengeance back to our people, and now I'm your new ruler. And then the movie ends. And there was supposed to be 2 more, but Fox didn't accept the pitches for the 2 sequels. And I think that's a crying shame, because I've realized that there was, like I said, there was a chain of inspiration here. Is that Wizards clearly inspired the movie Heavy Metal, which I'm not the biggest fan of heavy metal, but I'll at least appreciate it for what it for its place in cultural media. I'll at the very least I'll do that. But I'm realizing that the story and the presentation of the story in Heavy Metal is what blatantly what inspired the Squaresoft game Live Alive. There could be no mistake. So yeah, Wizards, super weird experimental movie, but in modern day, it's so obvious how much that it inspired the contemporaries that came after it. And I definitely think if you're a fan of animation, like I am, I freaking love hand-drawn animation. Wizards is more than just a weird, bizarre movie to watch. I think it's actually worth studying and using as a basis for what an animated work can be, and how to animate things and how to put them together in the first place. So yeah, seriously weird movie, but I think it's worth your time. I think it's fascinating and bizarre, and at times it's almost like having to stop and look at Roadkill just to be like, what is that? What am I looking at? What is this? But yeah, no, it's it's definitely something. Anyway, thank y'all for listening. Appreciate your time. God bless. I'm out.